Welcome to another episode of Sound People, where we tell inspiring stories of people in the Puget Sound. Today, we get to talk about the Food is Free project. The local chapter was started by David Thompson, who is here in Tacoma.
Yeah, he started a garden and must have a green thumb because he was able to produce a lot of fruits and vegetables, and it was more than he could eat. He realized a lot was going to waste, so he put a table out in front of his house on the sidewalk, says free food, and it's connected a community and all of his neighbors ever since.
And David has such a giving heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, where did it come from? And he told us the story of him growing up very poor.
Yeah, and even as an adult, he was disabled at work. I know that he lived a period of his time, he shared with us homeless, and it's just a really heartbreaking story.
Yeah, and I always think when you go through hardship like that, you basically can go one of two ways.
Yeah.
One, you become resentful.
Angry at the world.
And you try to make a path of destruction as big as you can. And number two, you develop a very grateful heart, and you try to make the world a better place, a place better than the one that you entered.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what David did.
Absolutely. I mean, he's connected so many people, from everyone that's growing in their gardens or sharing garden space, and those that are receiving the food. It's a really remarkable story.
Yeah, and he did it during a pandemic when we were in lockdown and
socially distant.
Exactly. And I always think about people that were social creatures and that we need each other. And David did that through the pandemic. He brought a community together. And not only that, he grew it from one stand to 70 plus stands in Tacoma.
With more and more people signing up every day. It's very infectious, the connection is.
Sure. We hope that you'll enjoy this episode of Sound People.
Food is Free is international. It started in 2012. Traveled the world, went to Australia and then came back to America. 2015, I started the chapter here in Tacoma. I'd just come off of working. I was a 35-year mechanic, and my body broke down. I had to retire and take a disability. And I was depressed and just didn't have much going on. And had a big garden. It was about 2,000 square feet. And I couldn't get my family to come pick up produce. And everybody who has a garden knows you grow way too much stuff, and you got to get rid of it. And it's hard to get rid of it. It can be a challenge. So I found Food is Free on the internet, and I thought, this is pretty neat, and I could just put a table out front and set my stuff on it, and my neighbors will come pick it up. Well, it doesn't quite work that easily, but that's how we started off. And I just built it from there. Just little postings. I didn't think anybody paid attention to me on social media, but I just put little postings on there, and hardly ever did any Twitter stuff. Very, very rarely. And then about 3 years into it, Allison Morrow had sent me a message on Twitter. She's the King 5 environmental reporter, and she had seen my little table with some stuff on it and wanted to come do a video. So I spent maybe 2 months, 3 months deciding whether I wanted to really do that or not.
Right.
And it was way late in the season. I didn't have a whole lot growing. There was just I think I had a couple of sunflowers left and a tomato plant and some peas that I planted late.
Sure.
Ready to harvest. And she decided to make a little video with me picking those peas.
Yeah.
And, that thing went viral. It's at 33 million views now.
Oh my gosh.
300,000 shares. And so I went, wow, I better do something.
Wow.
So we started it, and
Yeah.
I built it from there. But the whole idea is that we encourage people to build vegetable gardens and to share with their neighbors.
Yeah.
That was the original concept, and that's what we're trying to stick to.
That's incredible.
Really cool.
Do you just take what you grow, and as you harvest it, you put it out on the table, or is there events? You go every Saturday and put it out? How does that work?
That's things are kind of changing now. The original concept was that you had a little table out in front of your garden.
Sure.
And that you would grow the stuff on there and you would put it on the table out front, and the neighbors would come by and grab it. they would see that little garden out front. The idea is to do them in the front yard or out front, so they would watch the stuff grow and they would inspire them to try and build their own garden as well. And you would come by and, you know, they would have somebody to come ask questions to, and then everybody could work together to try and grow food for the whole community and put it on the table. And, you know, they could take pictures and go, hey, look what our neighborhood did, you know, have like neighborhood competitions on how well they could grow that food. That kind of changed over COVID, and then other items began coming onto the tables, and that kind of changed. So to try and bring back that concept, that neighborhood concept, I'm thinking more of maybe, I'll just put it out there. I'm thinking of contacting Metro Parks and trying to work an agreement with them to maybe have a pop-up food events on certain weekends at the different parks in the different neighborhoods.
Oh, that'd be really neat.
So we could just go in there and pop some tables up and then bring all the produce that the gardens had produced and give it out to the whole neighborhood at like events like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, things are going to change a little bit, but that's kind of what I'm thinking now.
Have you always gardened?
No, you know, I used to, when I was a kid, I used to watch Crockett's Victory Garden on PBS.
Yeah.
And I always wanted a garden. I thought, boy, that's cool. I always wanted to do that. But I never, you know, growing up and, you know, going through life and stuff, I just never had time, never really had a place. And I moved into my house in Tacoma 12 years ago, and it had a little, maybe 400 square foot garden in it that was all overgrown, and it was all blackberries. And I just started with that, and like, wow, it would just hit me, and it was like, man, I was pretty good at it. And it just, I got crazy. Like everything I do in life, I just went out of control.
I love this social aspect that you mentioned earlier, kind of pre-COVID. And I'm just kind of curious how that has spread that way. I mean, what it's done for you with the neighbors and how it kind of spread out. If you could.
Well, there's two aspects to that. The gardens are really, and you could look, what I called it was the Gardens of the People, and it was a Parkway Gardens. In order to qualify for some of the grants that I got, it had to be on public property. So to do that, we built them up next to the streets. Because that's actually city property that's maintained by the homeowner. So it kind of worked for perfectly. I could use city funds to buy the materials and then have the homeowners tend the gardens. So that's why we did it. So I built 10 of those the first year, and then I built 20 last year.
Wow.
So they're all around town, and that was the idea, was to do that and bring those communities together. But what happened was Tagro deliveries were really held up, and I didn't really get the beds filled until mid-July. So our season kind of went bust. But all those tables were set up, so there was over 30 tables at these gardens that were sitting empty. And the neighbors said, hey, I want to help. And they went into their pantries and they started putting their pantry items on the table.
Really?
And giving that stuff away. And that seemed all cool and innocent, you know, and I went, hey, that's fine. And then next thing I knew, people were putting coolers out and setting them up next to the street. And those had meat, dairy, and stuff in there.
Wow.
And then you kind of see that there could be some
evolution.
problems that could happen with that kind of a setup. So I tried really hard to try and reel that back in and bring it back to where it was. And it's the table, which was just meant to be a little thing to the garden, took on a life of its own. And now there's a whole network of those tables, almost, I think, over 70 of them around Tacoma now. It was to bring all of us together. And that's really what we want to push for, is that the neighborhoods will all work together to bring food security to their neighborhood. Because that's how we could get through times like we know.
Yeah, especially last year.
Yeah, that's what it really taught us, is that our food supply system is extremely vulnerable. I mean, you remember at the beginning of COVID, all the stores were empty, there was no food around. If you think about this, the COVID ran through all the farm workers in Yakima, just devastating them, okay? We depend on them to go out and harvest those fields, okay? They were all in isolation. Who harvested the fields?
Nothing to harm.
Okay, the truck drivers, everything shuts down, and so our food system is so vulnerable. if you think about a really successful program that we had was Victory Garden. And in 1944, at the height of it, that was the very height of the Victory Garden, there was, they estimate over 30 million of those Victory Gardens around the United States. And they produced 8 million tons of fresh fruits and vegetables. That was over 40% of all the fresh fruits and vegetables consumed in the United States that year. That's the potential of the Victory Gardens. Our population has increased by 200% since then. So 30 million could be considerably more if it was 40%. What I'm proposing is that we have a 20% initiative, and that we bring 20% of the fresh fruits and vegetables that we consume in Tacoma to be produced in Tacoma, whether that's through urban agriculture, home gardens. There's several different projects in town that we could achieve that. And if we could bring 20% of those fresh fruits and vegetables back to Tacoma, we could stabilize our food supply system. So if Lahar comes down, wipes out the freeway and nothing could get in, we'd still have something that we could fall back on. It would stabilize our community. So that's what we're going to push for, is this 20% initiative. And we're going to call these new gardens big gardens, food independence gardens. And that's the program that I'm really going to push this year. I've got two big garden projects that we got in the works now. They're going to be communal gardens, where the community will come together, work together in a larger garden plot to produce 90% of that food will go straight to the community. 10% will go to the volunteers.
Wow. How does someone get involved to help?
You go to our website, foodisfreewashington.org. There's a volunteer sign up there. You can put down what your interests are. There's different things that you can volunteer for. And you put in your time that you're available. And then as we develop this system more, we'll be able to contact you and mobilize volunteers as we need them. Because we're working 3 different avenues now. We're working food rescue, gardening, and gleaning, which I don't know if you know what gleaning is. Gleaning is going through, and I work through Harvest Pierce County, and people register their fruit trees all around through Tacoma and Pierce County. And we go through and we schedule times to come pick all that fruit and then give that back to the community so it doesn't get lost going onto the ground. That's one of our aspects. The other one is gardening, is we building gardens and encouraging gardening. And then we're doing the food rescue. The food rescue came about in May of this last year with just a truckload of onions. And we gave away the onions and started doing it. We gave away 800 tons by the end of last year.
How did you get here? Like, if you look back and say, did I see myself doing this? And what led me to do it? And
my dad, my dad had a nut and bolt business all growing up. And I watched him build his business, and I kind of knew how he did it. And I always wanted to have my own business. I tried my nut and bolt business twice and failed at it when I was young. And, then I had a family to take care of, and I knew how to be a mechanic, so I went and became a mechanic, paid the bills. But another thing I did when I was really young is I sold vacuum cleaners for a couple of years. And I learned a lot of sales techniques.
What kind of vacuum cleaner?
Well, I sold rainbows at first.
Okay.
And then I sold Forbergs. It was a German vacuum. And it was during the 1984 LA Olympics. And I had run around Orange County selling vacuum cleaners during the Olympics. And I learned a lot. I learned how to work with people, and I, those skills just kind of stuck away for a long time. But they've become very useful in what I'm doing now.
Yeah. They're all laughing here because I sold vacuum cleaners.
Too.
Did you?
When I was in college, you learn a lot from door-to-door sales. And
He grins.
You learned that tenacity. I think tenacity is probably the biggest thing that you learn is that you don't give up.
Right. You gotta keep going. You just shut your brain in and you just knock on the door. Hello?
Yeah. But then you'll meet a lot of wonderful people.
You do.
I met
For
some of the greatest people in the world doing that.
Yeah, I love the idea, and I wonder if from some of the vacuum cleaners and stuff, where you got maybe your sense for community, and your sense for neighborhood, and.
No, that's kind of probably a little darker of a story.
Oh, okay.
My dad threw me out when I was 14. So I really got a 9th grade education, and I grew up in the streets.
Yes.
I hitchhiked the United States in 1978.
Okay.
And so, no, I've seen the dark side and the bad side of life, and I've been truly hungry, where real genuine hunger is, and so I always want to give back. And being a homeless youth, I've always thought that I wish that it was in the 70s and there wasn't a whole lot to fall back on back then. There wasn't. I never saw my food bank till I came up here in '98. So back in the 70s, you didn't have that. You just hustled and made it through it.
Wow.
So that kind of always gave me a real sense of trying to give back to my community. And then like I said, I was in deep depression when I started this, and it just worked my way out of it, and I'm loving it. This is all I do now.
David, we're going to take a little bit of a twist here.